Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. It's a beautiful midweek morning, and of course, you're tuned into Channel Africa. Thank you so much to the morning team. That's Asanda Peta and Peter Ndoro, kickstarting our morning on Africa Rise and Shine. It's now 8 minutes past 9 Central Africa time, and you're tuned into On the Move with myself, Palesa and Benjamin Moshatama, with you for the next 3 hours. Of course, giving you news, views, and entertainment from the African perspective. As usual, lots to talk about. So tap in on www.channelafrica.co.za on the very important SABC Plus app. You can find Channel Africa there under the radio section. And of course, our audio bouquets, DSTV channel 802 and OpenView HD channel 628. Ritual killings continue to be on the rise all across the African continent, and particularly ritual killings that include children. They've been reported regularly across the continent, and a case in point is the targeting of children with albinism for ritual purposes in Tanzania. One research report says 1 in 5 people in Mozambique and 1 in 4 people in South Africa believe that rituals and traditional medicines made with human body parts are more potent and effective than those using non-human objects.
Scary.
So this is very worrisome mindset.
Scary and a little bit yucky.
Very yucky. Not a little bit yucky. It's very, very yucky and very scary to think that, these are mindsets that really affect human lives on a daily basis. So
I've heard these stories in our hoods and in our townships. I remember there was a time just close to where my sister lives, they lost a child. And they couldn't get the child back because the child was killed. And when they found the little girl, there were body parts that were missing, and she was dead, unfortunately. And it was all over the news. But the thing about that is, it sounds like it's just another story that's far-fetched until it happens to you.
True. And actually, this is so, deeply rooted that there's so many African cultures. I know a lot of people here in South Africa as well. When a family member dies, they check all their body parts. So they check for their tongue, check if their ears are there, check if all the body parts are there, because it's actually quite common for the selling of human body parts. So we'll be unpacking a study conducted in Ghana and Kenya on who's doing ritual killings and why, and we'll be unpacking that in today's first hour. Then we have our becoming feature. We are all becoming, we're all constantly evolving, so this is definitely
that's an interesting one.
Yes.
You're calling it a becoming feature. We've never called it a becoming feature before.
Yes.
So that's interesting.
Very
What's that all about, buddy?
So this is about who we are, right?
Okay.
As the African people, who we are as individuals, what we are becoming, and how we are constantly evolving. So it really is about a personal development and just looking at...
Even when he's in studio,
he is
all the time, like
24/7.
24/7. I'm
100%.
like, Peter, you on radio. No one can see your suit.
He
And it's
does
like,
not
this is
care.
just me, man. This is my swagger.
Yeah, so if you're also someone that struggles with perfectionism, perhaps this is one that you can listen closely to. In the second hour, we'll be speaking to counseling psychologist from Kenya, Yvonne Natasha, in the second hour. And then we wrap up the conversations of the day with our health feature, Live Well, taking a look and unpacking dementia on the African continent.
Yeah, I'm actually wrong when I say people can't see Peter, because now you can.
Oh, yes, now you can see Peter. True.
Yeah, now you can see us. We used to love being on air without being seen because you didn't have to stylize how you look. But now you can actually see us, how we look like here in our studios.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. You can tune in our multiple platforms at Channel Africa 1 being the Instagram handle. Remember, we also on YouTube on the very same handle at Channel Africa 1. And also you can find us on our Facebook page. Our Facebook page is titled Channel Africa, and you can just let us know where you're listening from. We've had people from different parts of the world, really. Yesterday we just had someone from Mexico. Hola, if you're still listening today. And we had someone from Mozambique. There's always people coming from different countries. Malawi, Kenya. Hello, everybody. Remember, you can be part of the show today, 9 to 12. Come greet us on our live stream on our Facebook page. We want to know who you are. We want to know where you're listening to us from. Definitely, we want to know you as well. And also, you have the opportunity as well just to talk about the different conversations that we're having here on the show. Remember, another way to engage us is our WhatsApp number on +2763 406 9126. You can text us there or voice note us. Hey, let's get going. It is On the Move.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine.
I want the Africa that makes every single African proud of the continent and have hope. And there's so much stuff that's going on that's positive. And if we can just lock into that, Namaganjani, everyone is going to get there.
Where are we going? Where are we trying to get to?
The idea of working together, which is why I'm excited about this new voice.
And the new voice is me, Asanda Peta, broadcast journalist with about 15 years of experience on the radio space.
Welcome, Asanda. I've been waiting for you for a long time.
Were you waiting for me?
I was.
Really?
Yeah, because for 3 months I was on my own.
So be sure to tune in right here on Channel Africa Mondays to Fridays from 6 to 9 a.m. Central African Time.
If you want to know about your continent, this is the best place to start your day.
Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Vue d'Afrique avec Joël Mouteba.
Sadio, quelles sont les motivations derrière la décision du général Mamadi Doumbouya d'accorder la grâce présidentielle à Moussa Dadis Camara?
Alors, officiellement ici, c'est pour des raisons de santé et puis avec aussi à ajouter que c'est dans un élan de réconciliation nationale, c'est un cas social. Mais au-delà de ça, les journalistes ils voient sous un angle politique les moins critiques et estiment que c'est pour peut-être faciliter un petit peu la réconciliation que pourrait tenter aujourd'hui le CNSD.
Vue d'Afrique. Du lundi au vendredi de 15h à 16h, temps universel.
London.
I will receive.
Manifest, baby girl.
Manifest. And actually, it's great that we're having this conversation because in this hour, we'll be having our new feature called Becoming.
Okay.
But today, we're looking at a very different angle. We're talking about perfectionism.
I've never suffered from that.
Neither have I.
I'm an imperfectionist.
Yeah. I'm actually glad to be imperfect. I really do embrace my imperfection. And it's great because I can just live life and say, hey, look, it is what it is, and move on and still be happy moving forward. But I know there's so many people who do suffer from perfectionism.
And are they suffering really? I don't think so. I like those people. Some of those people are really good people. I've got a friend who is a perfectionist, and sometimes he's teaching me just to do certain things in an orderly way, in an ordinary fashion. So it's good to have those kind of people in your life. He always has stuff in his car, making sure that everything is sorted before he drives. He checks his engine. His car is always clean. And mine is like, when I come with it, when it's dusty, it's like, my man, you're letting me down as a friend, man. You're letting me down.
What is this?
I mean, what is this? You can't be a friend of mine with this car looking like this. So I think we do need those perfectionists in our lives. We'll chat a little bit because I think to a certain degree it can be a healthy personal attribute. But thank you for joining us. Let us know where you're listening to us on our social media platforms. I see Sam Kaliati SC and Kafodia Legacy who is watching us here on our live stream. Remember, we're on all platforms so you can join us there. Well, let's take a bit of a break and then we'll be back.
The Midnight Snack. Every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege.
That is just me trying to imagine myself as a backup singer for Zonke because her music is just beautiful. As the song was playing, I was just, moving like a backup singer. You know how they are. They with their hands, being so dramatic and, putting that spice into the song. So the song is called Say Now and we love it here on the Midnight Snack. I hope you also love it.
Let's talk love, intimacy, and relationships on the Midnight Snack with Chanduko Ligege. Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
Get set and be ready to go.
On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
It's 20 minutes past 9 Central Africa time. You're tuned into On the Move right here on Channel Africa. We have a brand new feature here called Becoming, where essentially we unpack the human experience. And this can look at life in so many different perspectives, right? Yeah. We are every day living the human experience. Mm-hmm. And one thing about, a word that you always hear about us as humans is that, it's okay. You're human. You can't be perfect. You are not perfect. And before we go in this conversation, I hope you're joining us on our live stream at Channel Africa 1 on various platforms. On Facebook, there we also have a live stream there. We have a live stream on Instagram as well as on YouTube. And we see you, Kafodwa Legacy, Innocent Kafodwa from Katete District in Zambia. Thank you for your shout out.
Halabak Katete District.
We love to see it. We love to see it. So you also go on our live stream and let us know where you're listening to us from and where you're tuning in from to be a part of today's conversations. So usually when people say, don't worry, you're human, it usually is just a quote that means when people say to you, you're human, it just means you're not perfect. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. And even when someone does someone to you, people always give you the advice, but remember, they're also human, which says, then they're imperfect. Yeah. They have human imperfections. There's human error. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people, well, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on the particular circumstance, there are a lot of people who have what we call perfectionism or who subscribe to something called perfectionism, which is often seen as an unhealthy obsession with flawlessness. And today we're going to be unpacking this. We do live in a world where perfectionism is often celebrated, but is also sought after. We want things to be perfect for us. We want to live this perfect life, and it's beautiful, but unfortunately most of us can't live that perfect life because we are imperfect beings. So today we're unpacking perfectionism with counseling psychologist from Kenya, Yvonne Natasha. Yvonne, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Am I correct to say that when people say you're only human or they're only human, that just means, yeah, don't worry, you're not perfect?
You're very right.
So let's speak about this, right? When we talk about the human experience, many of us in various parts of our lives, whether in our love lives, in our bodies, in our interactions, in our work, in our finances, it seems like we often strive for perfection.
That's true.
So why is this? Why are we always striving for perfection?
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. To the listeners, I'm grateful for your time. So basically, perfectionism is deeply human, okay? So it often starts with a desire to do our best, to be accepted, to feel worthy. But somewhere along the way, that healthy motivation can twist into an internal pressure to never fail, to never fall short, which is to never make mistakes, and also to never show weakness. So most often we want to make our parents proud now as children, to get that A in school, to impress at work, or look perfect on social media. So this means that we fear being judged, we fear being misunderstood, or even left behind. And that fear quietly whispers, it might tell you you're only as good as your last success, which is not true. Yeah, so maybe we can just dig deep into the perfectionist journey, which is often silent. And I'm saying this because behind a glowing report card may be sleepless nights and panic attacks. No one knows what it takes for you to get that A. And also behind a well-curated, those Instagram photos, maybe someone battling deep insecurity or even depression. But now, because of the pressures of this life, we start to admire these people, and we don't know what they're battling. Again, behind. Sorry.
Yes, please continue.
Oh, I wanted to conclude it behind probably a successful business or even a job title, maybe someone who feels like a fraud, constantly chasing the next achievement to prove their worth. That's the thing with perfectionism, because it's all about your image out there, not really what is inside you.
We hear that all the time. In fact, it's quite a popular phrase in the radio world. You're only as good as your last link. And people often take that into their everyday lives, right? You're only as good as the last time you performed. You're only as good as your last gym session. You're only as good as whatever. But essentially, we are comparing our goodness to external validations and not particularly what's on the inside. But I want us to break off this conversation properly and speak about the term perfectionism. What exactly is it if, identified well? What is perfectionism?
All right. So very quickly, let me take you through what that really is. And I'll start off with a rhetoric question. And I'll ask you and the listeners at large, have you ever felt like nothing you do is ever good enough, even when others say, oh, it's amazing? Well, food for thought. Now let's define perfectionism. So perfectionism is a personality trait where a person strives for flawlessness, sets extremely high performance standards, and is overly critical of themselves. That is the simplest way to define perfectionism.
So when someone, sees themselves as a perfectionist, is this someone who just does everything right? Or is it just someone who constantly seeks the validation to say everything you're doing is exactly as it should be? Can perfectionism actually be reached?
Come again, can perfectionism
actually be reached?
Yes. Yeah, sure, it can, because I'm looking at it in the sense that perfectionists now the people who are into the perfectionism, they can be overly critical of themselves and others. So, this even brings strained relationships because it is so hard for you to relate with other people. Why? You always have that perspective of wanting things to be perfect. Like they might expect too much from friends, colleagues or partners, and that can cause a lot of tension. Again, I'm looking at it in the sense that perfectionists can avoid taking risks or trying new things for fear of not being perfect. So basically, what this means is that it can limit growth and life experiences. I'm also looking at it in the aspect of loss of joy and creativity. Why? This is because when you're so perfect, you're into perfectionism, it kills, that spontaneity and makes people focus only on the outcome instead of enjoying the process or even the good time at that particular moment. So this is why you find that these people, they barely or rather rarely celebrate small wins. Why? Because they fail to focus on what is happening at that particular time.
Could perfectionism really affect the mental health of the perfectionist? I mean, life is ever changing. So many things happen, and not everything will always be perfect. And maybe that can have a huge toll on their mental health.
Yes, perfectionism can greatly affect mental health and it can lead to mental health struggles. And I'm saying this because such people often have anxiety, they often get depression and burnout. Why? Because they always want to do more than is expected of them. All because they want to look perfect. And they can also develop low self-esteem because their worth is tied to performance. Like if you don't meet a certain target, now you start feeling some type of way. They really forget the statement of living a day at a time. Why? Because they want to do everything and they want everything to fall into place at that particular time. So they constantly feel not enough, and definitely that affects mental health.
All right, Yvonne, we need to take a break. Please stay on the line with us. We're going to go into our news, and then we want to continue to unpack perfectionism, especially for those who struggle with their mental health due to being perfectionists. How do they get the relevant assistance? But also the community that's around the perfectionist, their friends, their partner, their family. How do they handle the perfectionist in their lives? It's 9:30 Central Africa time. Let's get our latest sports news with Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa.
The African perspective.
Thank you, Palesa. Good morning once again from the sports desk. Now, African football legend Asamoah Gyan has urged players participating in this year's CAF Schools African Football Championship Continental Finals to actively pursue education and also have it to support their talent. Now, Gyan, who's one of Africa's most greatest football exploits, was speaking after the tournament's draw held in Accra on Monday, where he was amongst other football giants invited by CAF for the 4-day tournament starting today and officially concluding on the 26th of April. The CAF African Schools Football Championship Ghana will also see the tournament host Ghana take on zonal champions from across CAF's zonal unions in both the boys as well as the girls under 15 age categories to determine the season's continental champions. Now, while the tournament, which is the first in the world, is an exceptional platform for players to showcase their talents, Jan has also urged them to give equal attention to their education and also have it to support their talents. The CAF African Schools Football Championship, CAF, is rolling out a series of educational programs that are designed to educate as well as capacitate various football stakeholders as part of CAF's holistic approach to youth development on the African continent. While further afield now, Saturday's 3 Serie A matches have been rescheduled to avoid a clash with Pope Francis' funeral. The 88-year-old passed away on Monday, with the Vatican later confirming he died of a stroke. Como versus Genoa, as well as Inter Milan up against Roma, will also now take place on Sunday, with Lazio up against Parma rescheduled for Monday. Now, 4 top-flight matches were also called off on Monday and rearranged for today following the Pope Francis' death. The Coppa Italia semi-final second leg between Inter Milan as well as AC Milan is also scheduled to take place that day, with the second semi-final between Bologna as well as Empoli on Thursday. Meanwhile, Pope Francis was a known football fan, had supported Argentinian club San Lorenzo since his days as a child. On to this now. Britain's Jack Draper says Yannick Sinner does not deserve any hate as the world number 1 prepares for his comeback from a 3-month doping ban. Now, Draper is a long-time friend of Sinner and spent several years, days, practicing with the Italian in Monte Carlo just last week. Sinner was banned from the sport in February after reaching a settlement with World Anti-Doping Agency WADA over 2 positive drug tests last year. The 3-time major champion is able to return to competitive action from the 5th of May and plans to make his comeback at the Italian Open in Rome. Sinner had previously also been cleared of any wrongdoing by an independent panel after testing positive for the banned substance cluster ball in March of 2024. He accepted that he had inadvertently contaminated by his physiotherapist, who was treating a cut on his hand with an over-the-counter spray that contained cluster ball. Sinner agreed to a 3-month ban with WADA to settle the case and not to go to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. But the timing of the suspension, which meant Sinner did not miss a single Grand Slam tournament and will now return in time of May's French Open, was criticised by some as being conveniently timed. On to this now. MBB Basketball Club veteran player Neo Motiba is confident his side will put up a strong fight during their debut Basketball Africa League Season 5, which comprises of 12 teams from across the African continent. The Blue Soldiers will battle it out in the Nile Conference, scheduled from the 17th until the 25th of May in Kigali, Rwanda, where they will also meet the challenge of the Nairobi City Thunder from Kenya, Al Ali Tripoli of Egypt, as well as the host side APR. Speaking to Channel Africa Sport, Mutiba says they want to play top quality oppositions out of the country to put them through the test of the BAL.
The one thing that is obviously outstanding is for us to play as many games as we can together. And we're lucky that we are actually in season, so we look at about 14 to 15 games before we get to Kigali. Obviously, the other thing is we want to play against top quality opposition. So we are hoping that we will be able. We are playing in a tournament in 2 weeks' time, where we've got teams from outside of South Africa, which will obviously put us through the test.
Motiba, by the way, is a respected name in South African basketball with national team experience. He also unpacks just how massive how massive the team's challenge will be in the BAL as they continue to search for continental glory.
With my experience, and luckily there's, our coach and our management, they've all been there and they've done that. But with my experience, I know that playing outside the country, it is tough. And my job would be there to just calm the guys, make them understand that nothing is going to be easy. Africa is tough, as I've mentioned. And no one's going to lie down and let you take it. It's all going to take everything we have for us to go out there and be successful.
I'm back with more sporting updates in the next hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri kamlondola wazochitika pena paliponse.
Aphungu a nyumba ya malamulo mu dziko la Malawi akuchita zokambirana nawo pa zinthu zosiyanasiyana pambuyo pa nyumbayi kutsegulidwa masiku apitawo ndipo pokondwa nyamasa ukali nafe pompano chiyambireni aphungu akukambirana masiku apitawo ndi zovuta ziti zomwe zachitika mnyumba imene ya malamulo.
Ndingathe kunena kuti state of national address imene a president Dr. Lazarus Chakwera akhala kuipereka mnyumba ya malamulo imeneyi idautsa mpungwepungwe kwambiri nyumbayi chifukwa pofika panopa mene ndikuyankhula pano ndiye kuti munafuna kukandewu mnyumbayi leader of the house olemekezeka Richard Kimwendo Banda kuyimirira kuyankha koma mopsa mtima zimene amayankhula phungu oyimira ku Blantyre City South East Osama Suleiman kunena kuti sona imene adapereka president pa 14 February ikuonetsa kuti palibe chilichonse cha zero chimene chidaperekedwa mu sona imeneyi akuti imene ayichotse
zochitika ndi madaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa.
Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa
on the move.
Thank you, Musibudi, for that sports update. Let's move on to our latest business update with Eva Chipa.
Business news
on Channel Africa.
The African perspective.
Thanks, Palesa. Judgment has been reserved in the Western Cape High Court in South Africa on the matter dealing with the value-added tax hike 8 days before the 0.5% increase is due to kick in. The court made an undertaking yesterday that it will return to the affected parties by next week Tuesday. The Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters took their battle against the VAT hike to court, saying Parliament erred in its decision to adopt the Fiscal Framework Report, which paves the way for the increase. Both parties argued the increase will have a dire impact on already struggling consumers in South Africa. The DA's legal representative, Advocate Michael Bishop, argued that proper processes were not followed.
Our case is that Parliament followed an unlawful process and did not take a lawful decision about the fiscal framework and therefore about the VAT increase. So we said we didn't lose in Parliament. That's why we're here.
In a bid to promote a culture of entrepreneurship in South Africa, a free 5-week online challenge has been launched for youth aged 9 to 16 years old. Economist Davi Ruet and Durban musician Majosi will host this entrepreneurship challenge through the COA Academy. Children from around the country are being encouraged to take part in the challenge, with registration closing on the 1st of May. COA Academy Principal Mark Anderson says it will equip young learners with the skills needed to create and sustain successful businesses.
One of the things we're very aware of in traditional education is that a lot of students feel a real disconnect between what they see in the textbook and what they see in the real world around them. The Entrepreneurship Challenge is designed in a way that's not just teaching important information and knowledge, but actually giving the students an opportunity to practice that in the real world and to exercise those skills and then reflect on them. And that helps our students to move past a fear of failure and to actually learn to see this as a growing opportunity.
South African lender Capitec Bank has reported a 30% rise in annual profit as net interest income grew by double digits. Capitec, one of the fastest growing South African banks, which targets low-income earners, said that headline earnings, which is a key metric in South Africa for the year ending February 28, rose to just over $738 million. Oil prices rose today, extending the prior day's gains as investors weighed a fresh round of U.S. sanctions on Iran, a drop in U.S. crude stocks, and a softer tone from President Donald Trump towards the Federal Reserve. Brent crude futures climbed 55 cents to $67.99 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was up 54 cents to $64.21 a barrel. Market analysts say both benchmark prices this morning were also backed by a hope of positive turnouts between the US and China over import tariffs. Yesterday, Trump backed off from the notion of firing Fed Chair Jerome Powell after days of intensifying criticism for not cutting interest rates. Meanwhile, staying with Trump, he also told reporters that a trade deal with China would result in a substantially lower tariff, but it will not be zero. China currently faces tariffs of up to 145% on many products. The president's comments followed a White House statement that good progress is being made towards a deal with China. Trump also said that he would be nice in negotiations with Beijing.
They're going to do very well, and I think they're going to be happy, and I think we're going to live together very happily and ideally work together. So I think it's going to work out very well. But no, it's at 145%. They will not be anywhere near that number.
Taking a look at your financial indicators, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 603. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 60. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 88. And in Zambia, it's 28 kwacha 43. To the BRICS countries now, where $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 77. In Russia, it will cost you 81 rubles 30. India, 85 rupees 16. China, 7 yuan 31. And in South Africa, it's 18 rand 62 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,341, platinum at $959 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $68.03 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2 711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I'm Eva Chipa.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. No time to waste. Be on the move with Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa and
Hey, it's our becoming feature right now, 43 minutes past 9 o'clock Central African time. We're continuing a conversation on this one, perfectionism, and we've been looking at some of the difficulties around perfectionism. We're speaking to counseling psychologist from Kenya. Yvonne is joining us for this conversation. Yvonne is joining us to speak about what drives a person to be a perfectionist and ways to actually even break that perfectionism. But I'm going to come from a different viewpoint, Yvonne. I think some perfectionists are wonderful people and they're able to organize themselves very, very well. And some of them are perfectionists in a positive way in terms of, that's part of their personality and their perfectionism can be a strength. Can you use that quality in a good way, or am I wrong to make such a statement?
You're not wrong to make such a statement, because it is true in as much as perfection, there are always two sides of a coin,
yes.
Right? And that's how we should also look at life. There's the negative way of looking at it and also the positive way of looking at it. So in as much as these people are a pain to so many people, this personality is also of a positive impact. And I'm saying this because you find most people push us to, achieve our goals. Why? Because I tend to see them as cholerics. Mm-hmm. And that is a temperament where people are pushers, they are leaders, because they like things that are streamlined the right way. So in as much as they'll give you that pressure, they'll force you to be on the move to keep things moving. That is a good way of looking at perfectionists.
Yvonne, I like the fact that you use that phrase "on the move," because our show is on the move. So well done on that. Yvonne, let's talk a little bit about also how we can gain something from perfectionists, because at times we look at them from a negative perspective. I've got a friend, his name is Thabo, and he is a perfectionist in many, many ways, in how he dresses, in making sure his car is clean. I was telling Palesa that if I arrive at his place and my car is dirty, he gives me that look like, dude, no, you can't be my friend with your car looking so dusty. And I think that's a great attribute, because he's teaching me certain things about life that are actually positive and make me as a friend look good. So it's rubbing off me in a positive sense. We need some of those people, don't we, who have a way of just reaching out a little bit more, doing things a little bit more, striving a little bit more, reaching out a little bit more, and helping us a little bit more to want more from life.
Yeah, sure. Great question. So perfectionists can bring a lot of value. And I repeat, a lot of value, especially when their tendencies are well managed. Whether you're working with one, in a relationship with one, or just observing from the sidelines. And here's how we can gain something from them. And the very first one is that they set high standards. You can learn to raise your own bar by watching how they strive for excellence, because these people are pushers. They don't give up. So their attention to detail and dedication can be contagious, especially in team settings. They want to be the best. So that helps us also to want to set high standards. The other aspect I could talk of is they push for improvement. And I'm saying this because perfectionists often spot flaws that others miss. And you see, this can help in refining ideas. It can also improve quality or even avoid costly mistakes. Why? Because they have that sharp insight. And they're open to their feedback. Why? Because they are perfect. So they want everything to be spotless, to be flawless. So they definitely push for improvement. And the other is that they inspire consistency. But the perfectionists, they don't settle for just okay or for anything that is not perfect. So that consistency can inspire a culture of excellence and accountability.
All right. Sure. Let's wrap it up. We're running out of time very quickly. Let's chat a little bit about what you spoke about as a final question, Yvonne. How to actually regulate your perfectionism, to use it in a healthy way. What do you think are the few pointers that you can give where someone can actually control their perfectionism, not to be overboard, but also to regulate it so also it doesn't affect the mental health issues that you were speaking about earlier on?
All right. So the very first aspect is to set goals. You set excellence goals, not perfect goals. Okay, because the aim for growth and progress is really not flawlessness. So ask yourself, is this good enough to serve its purpose well? If yes, let it go. The other is you supposed to challenge the all or nothing mindset. You replace it with, if it's not perfect, it's a failure. And instead you replace with done is better than perfect, or mistakes help me grow, or I can always revise later. So you don't put that excess pressure on yourself. Again, you can also practice self-compassion, where you notice your inner critic and you replace that harsh self-talk with a gentler, supportive tone. You can also celebrate progress and small wins, where you acknowledge steps forward. You also track your progress, and you can also set realistic deadlines. Perfectionists may spend excessive time, tweaking details. So you're supposed to give yourself time limits and stick to them. And maybe the very last one is you work with a therapist or a coach. Because sometimes perfectionism is deeply tied to self-worth or even past experiences. So talking it through with a professional can help unpack and reframe those beliefs. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Yvonne. This has been very helpful, and you've been very kind in terms of giving us your time. Where can people find you, Yvonne? Where can people go to get more of your expertise in Kenya?
Wow, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn as Yvonne Natasha, and I'm also on Instagram as Therapist Natasha.
Oh, you are fantastic. I know we're going to bring you back in on other conversations. I hope it becomes a regular with you, since you are so kind in how you speak. It seems like there's a lot of empathy in how you look at these matters of self-development. Thank you so much, Yvonne.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate.
That's counseling psychologist from Kenya, Yvonne Natasha. Hey, you're listening to us on DSTV channel 802, OpenView 628. And remember that SABC Plus app is another way to tune into Channel Africa. I see so many people on our live. I see you, Peter Mzumara. Urabile Wabile is there as well. Samu Brown is with us, and Peter Mzumara and Sai Tembo. Guys, let us know, where are you listening to us from? Holla back at your town, holla back at your city, wherever you are. Let us know where you are streaming us live from on Facebook and also on Instagram. We want to know where you are listening to us from, especially your city and your country. That would be nice to know. Remember, you are listening to us right here on The Move. My name is Benjamin Mushatama. I'm hanging out with Palesa and Hey, it's 9:52 Central African time. Let's go back to the music.
The rhythm of Africa, the pulse.
and Daniel. Daniel Francourt is the name of this particular jam right here on Channel Africa, giving you that African perspective. We're speaking about perfectionism, and I don't know, I find perfectionism quite boring personally, right? Because I find great interest in the journey of like the human experience, just the journey itself, and sometimes it's
trauma.
Yeah. Maybe I'm also used to the trauma of the human experience. But I still find perfectionism quite boring. I think if everything was perfect, I would have quite the boring life, because you would automatically know the outcome of everything. And I find great interest in sometimes not knowing what the outcome is going to be, because that keeps me intrigued, that keeps me exciting. It feels like life is a little bit of an adventure, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen. I can't wait to see what the results of some of the actions I make are going to be. And if I was perfect, then I would automatically already know what the outcome of everything would be. Therefore, I'd find like there would be nothing to look forward to.
I don't know. I tend to differ. I mean, we differ a lot on so many things on the show. And this is another thing that we might differ from. I'm not a perfectionist personally, because it's just not in my blood, you know, right? I kind of very kind of spontaneous, right?
Yeah.
So I can't be spontaneous and perfectionist.
Yeah,
doesn't work together. But I have people in my life that are perfectionists, and I value those people. It's like my mom; she's a perfectionist. Like, you get into her home, it's spotless. It's like everything is put together. Like, you eat at a particular time, she cooks in a particular way, she does kind of things in a particular fashion, right? And they create a routine around their lives. But that routine that they create themselves is remarkable, because number one, it shows, how disciplined they are. Many people who ascribe to perfectionists, I don't think they see themselves as perfectionists at times. We see them as such, and we see them as boring. But they create this kind of fantastic discipline in their lives. It's kind of internally ingrained. And another thing that I like about people who we might describe as perfectionists is how they strive for excellence. You know, my mother used to wake up at a particular time in the morning, and she would actually make sure that everything is done before she leaves to go to work, and then we'd be sorted. She'd be gone, and everything, when you wake up, everything is done in the house. You're like, okay, the meal is there, everything is sorted. Okay, I just have to get to school. And she leaves before the rest of us. On a Sunday, like I remember memories of our Sundays where, mom would cook at a particular time, and we'd be out at a particular time on
all the time,
every day, because at this time you have to get ready, you have to get out of the house, because we need to be here right on time.
Look, I agree with you in that sense, in terms of, and what I'm saying is that this is for my personal life. So for me as an individual, I like the adventure of imperfection.
I don't think you choosing to be imperfect. That's your personality.
No, it is my personality, but I enjoy that. I enjoy the fact that it's imperfect. But I also have quite a few perfectionists in my life. In fact, it seems like I attract a lot of perfectionists in my life because our characters are different, and it feels like a little bit more of a balance, because I bring into the life of some of the people that I see as perfectionists in my life, I bring that spontaneity into their life.
Oh, you're just using them, Bali.
No, definitely not.
I'm joking.
I bring a sense of adventure and spontaneity into their life, and sometimes they bring a form of structure that I may be lacking a little bit into my life. So I think the two work really well together, actually. I wouldn't want to be around, I wouldn't always want to be around another me, and I also enjoy the fact that you're able to engage with people who are opposite and not exactly like you.
And I was joking by using them, but it's kind of, it is true, because they do bring a particular aspect of who you are, and they do bring a particular great flavor. But let's move on to the second hour. It's 10:00 hours Central African time. Let's get the latest news and find out what's happening in the world and on the continent.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Benjamin. Looking at your top stories, Ghanaian President John Mahama suspends the country's Supreme Court Chief Justice and world leaders to attend Pope Francis' funeral this week. And your latest news, greetings to our listeners. Ghanaian President John Mahama has suspended the country's Supreme Court Chief Justice, a move that marks a first in the country's history. An investigation has been launched and 3 undisclosed petitions have been filed, making allegations against Gertrude Tokono, calling for her permanent removal. Elizabeth Mapari reports.
Chief Justices in Ghana enjoy security of tenure, meaning they can only be removed from office on a few grounds, which include incompetence and misbehavior. The content of the petitions has not been made public and she's yet to comment, while Ghana's former Attorney General has claimed her suspension is an attempt to undermine the judiciary. Tokono is Ghana's 3rd female Chief Justice and was nominated in 2023 by former President Nana Akufo-Addo. According to news agency Reuters, Tokono survived a removal request earlier this year when former President Akufo-Addo said a petition to have her dismissed had several deficiencies.
Meanwhile, the heads of state and government of the Economic Community of West African States gathered in Accra, Ghana yesterday to launch the 50th anniversary celebration of the regional bloc. Established on the 28th of May 1975 in Lagos, Nigeria, ECOWAS is recognized as one of Africa's most effective regional economic communities. The Golden Jubilee launch marks the start of a year-long activities across all member states. Channel Africa correspondent Eric Egbeta explains.
Ghana's new President John Mahama, appears to take a very different approach. In fact, he took the turn to invite the military head of these 3 Sahel countries to be a part of the Golden Jubilee celebration. Unfortunately, they were not present, but he spent a considerable chunk of his speech on that and the need for diplomatic communication to be re-established with these countries and for ECOWAS not to give up on them. And outside of the ceremony, which marked the commencement of the 50th anniversary celebration, there was a conference as well for the ministers of foreign affairs, which is expected to continue into tomorrow.
Ivory Coast's main opposition leader has been removed from the electoral roll by the judiciary, which says he is ineligible to run in the October presidential election. Tidjane Thiam renounced his French citizenship in order to run for president, but a court has argued that the former Credit Suisse boss forfeited his Ivory Coast nationality when he acquired French citizenship in 1987. Thiam said the court's decision was an act of democratic vandalism, which will disenfranchise millions of voters. His disqualification comes a week after he was confirmed as the only contender for the Centre-Right Democratic Party, the PDCI. One of South Africa's biggest teachers' union, the South African Democratic Teachers Union, will today lead a national march to the office of the National Treasury, the Department of Basic Education and the Department of Higher Education and Training in the country's capital, Pretoria. The union says the march is in protest against the austerity measures that are undermining public service delivery, particularly in education. It says this threatens the constitutional right to quality education, especially for children from poor and working class backgrounds. Sisi Sakhalo elaborates.
The union says the march will take place in line with the theme of Education International and the Global Federation of Education Unions, Go Public Fund Education. The march aims to draw attention to the effects that austerity measures are having on the country's education systems, teachers, learners and communities. It says budget cuts are crippling schools and that educators are forced to teach in overcrowded classrooms as vacant posts remain unfilled. In the Western Cape province alone, over 2,400 posts have been frozen, while other provinces have failed to expand their post establishments despite the rising number of learners.
And lastly, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the United States President Donald Trump will join world leaders and thousands of mourners who will attend the funeral of Pope Francis at St. Peter's Square in Vatican City on Saturday. The Pope died on Monday at the age of 88, Shawn Price Peace Report.
President Trump took to social media to confirm his and First Lady Melania Trump's attendance at the funeral of the late pontiff, writing that they looked forward to being there. Trump earlier ordered flags at government buildings and military posts around the world to be flown at half-staff until sunset on the day of the late Pope's burial. In addition to the UN Secretary-General, the British Prime Minister, and the presidents of Ukraine, France, Argentina, Brazil, and the European Union Commission have all indicated that they will be in attendance at Saturday's memorial.
Recapping on your top stories, Ghanaian President John Mahama has suspended the country's Supreme Court Chief Justice. This is a move that marks a first in the country's history. An investigation has been launched and 3 undisclosed petitions have been filed, making allegations against Gertrude Takano. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you for joining us on DSTV Channel 802, OpenView 628, www.channelafrica.co.za, and the SABC Plus app. Well, this is a scary one, not an easy one to be speaking about. It's happening, though, on the African continent. Ritual killings, including those of children. And we've seen a predominance of those ones of children. In fact, there is a case that's happening in Cape Town of a woman who's said to have sold her daughter. Just sold her daughter.
Oh, man.
Some people kind of testified in that particular case, saying that she sold her daughter for her blue eyes. However, there's different reasons that have actually come out, so we're not sure if it's for a ritual killing, so we can't really say it's because of that. But children do disappear in many African countries, and some of those are those with albinism. That is very common, and that happens for ritual purposes in countries like Tanzania. There's another report that shows that 1 in 5 people in Mozambique, 1 in 4 people in South Africa believe that rituals and traditional medicines made with human body parts are more potent and effective than those using non-human objects. Wow. That is so dramatic, but it is what we believe in as Africans. We're going to go into these beliefs. We're going to go into these actions with doctoral researcher and lecturer who's going to be joining us on the line, Emmanuel Sapong Owusu. And Emmanuel is a doctor. So we'll unpack the study that Emmanuel conducted in Ghana and Kenya on who is doing ritual killings. Do they happen in your country? Have you heard of them? Let us know on our different platforms.
It's so sad because these ritual killings have been made almost like an integral part of what people call tradition, right? And that means that this is something that's been existing for many, many, many centuries, and it's not going to go away because it's so hard to remove, especially the African, from something they call a tradition that is associated with some of these ritual killings. So will it ever end? We don't know there. Do join us though in this conversation. We're streaming streaming live on our social media platforms at Channel Africa 1. Find us there on Instagram, on Channel Africa on Facebook. And of course, that's the same handle you can use on our X. Use our hashtag on the move. The number to know is +27 63 406 9126. So engage with us on WhatsApp or via direct call. We love to hear from you. The show is yours, not us, not ours at all. In fact, this one is just for you. So do engage in the conversations of the day. Even if you want to comment on our perfectionism conversation in the first hour, you're still able to do so. So let's go. It's the second hour of On the Move.
This is for when you have to wake your neighbors up. Weekends, 3 to 6 in the morning.
On that beautiful piano tip. This is Angelic.
Thank you for joining us right here on Channel Africa. We're speaking ritual killings in our second hour, and they are regularly reported around the continent. In case in point is the targeting of children with albinism for ritual purposes in countries such as Tanzania, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago. One researcher reports that in Mozambique, 1 in 5 people are actually believing that rituals and traditional medicines made with human body parts are more potent and effective than those without using non-human objects. That's scary, right? And 1 in 4 people in South Africa believe the same thing. Children are particularly targeted for killing because they can't repel attacks and because of beliefs about the potency of their body parts. The victims in more than half of all the ritual murders reported in Ghana and Kenya in 2022 were actually children. We unpack a study conducted in Kenya and Ghana on who is doing ritual killings and why. Doctoral researcher and lecturer Dr. Emmanuel Sapong Owusu joins us on the line. Dr. Emmanuel, thank you for joining us here on Channel Africa.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, why did you think about zooming into this one? I think it is a critical thing that is becoming more and more spotlighted and more people are talking about it. But why was it of interest to you from an academic perspective?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. As you rightly mentioned, ritual murder is widespread in many African countries, including South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and in many other countries. But the only time we get to know about this crime is when it is reported in the media. So we know of ritual murder mainly because they have been reported in various countries by the media. Now I realize that for ages, nobody has tried to establish the magnitude of this phenomenon in African settings. And we do not know the nature of this practice. So I decided to conduct a study to establish the magnitude and motivations, socio-cultural, economic factors of or context of this crime. And we realized that there are no data sets in any country with regard to ritual murder cases. You don't have facts, any information about this. So the only way I thought I could get information about ritual murder and analyze this terrible offense or crime is through the media. So this is only to get something that will serve as a foundation for further studies and research on ritual murder.
So
particularly
basically,
ritual
we're
child
just
homicide.
scratching the surface of this phenomenon. Let's go back a little bit and define what a ritual murder is.
Okay, so ritual murder is the killing of children to use their blood and body. Not children, because I'm looking at that from the perspective of children. But ritual murder in general is the killing of human beings to use their body parts for ritual or occult purposes. And it is believed that if the body parts of these individuals are used to perform certain rituals or to make certain medicines, it could enhance the lives of people seeking a good life or seeking some fortunes in life. And so, in brief, it is the killing of human beings to use their body parts to perform various forms of rituals to achieve certain ends or certain goals in life.
Now, superstitions have always existed on the African continent. In fact, they exist all around the world. And it seems like some superstitions on the continent are deeply rooted or deeply associated with what is cultural or what is traditional. How does this really impact the rise of these ritual killings?
Very good. I think you are absolutely right. The whole idea of ritual murder is built on the belief systems of many African societies. We have various beliefs which are absolutely, we can say ridiculous, but for those who believe in them, they are actually real. Now, different people believe in different things. Different people believe that if you use the body parts of, for instance, a person with albinism, you are more likely to achieve what you want. So all these beliefs that we have actually driven us or compelled us to do things which are not consistent with what society expects us to do. So every single belief that we have, and remember that not all superstitions are bad. Some superstitious beliefs are actually normal. They are harmless. They don't really do anything to anybody. Just a few of them that have been proven to be very unhealthy and very harmful. And so it is because of the culture and our belief systems that have promoted these beliefs. For instance, if you go to Ghana, Nigeria, you realize that many people believe that juju people have power to do certain things, to heal and all that. These are cultural things. And once someone believes that another person can make them powerful and rich and can make their business succeed or progress, they are likely to do horrible things just to realize their objective. So every harmful superstitious belief in Africa is actually situated within the context of a particular culture belief system.
Mm-hmm. So fascinating, Dr. Emmanuel. Let's look at that fascination over the human body. What is it that people get into it, that they wrapped around it in such a way that they see it as a magical phenomenon, especially using human body parts? What was your observation?
Okay, let me use Ghana for instance. In Ghana, the idea that human body parts can perform miracles for people it has a very long history. Among the Asante of Ghana, there was once a chief priest known as Okonfo-Anokye, who once used human body parts to perform rituals that enabled the Asante people to win various battles around the 1600 and 1700. So because of all these stories, you can call them myths, but the people believe that it occurred and this individual was able to use human body parts or human beings to perform rituals that enable the Asante people to win wars. Now, this belief is still there now. So people believe that if that occurred in those days, then it is still powerful and it can still occur today. So it is because of some of these mythical stories that is compelling people to believe that it could still work for us today. So they are all built on the historical settings of our various communities or societies in Africa.
It's very interesting because it seems like it's embedded in entrenched belief systems. We'll continue the conversation, Doctor. Just stay there on the line. We're just taking a quick break. We're speaking to Dr. Emmanuel Sapong, who is a doctoral researcher and lecturer, speaking to us independently today, but he is stationed at the Aberystwyth University. Well, it's 20 minutes past 10 o'clock Central African time. Do stay with us right here on Channel Africa.
Este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África, com Remo Samo e João Yabalá.
O surto da cólera em Angola tem causado grande preocupação, afetando já mais de metade das províncias do país. Simultaneamente, a Agência dos Estados Unidos para o Desenvolvimento Internacional, USAID, um dos maiores doadores mundiais de assistência humanitária, decidiu não priorizar os países com maior incidência de malária. Para discutirmos as causas do alastramento da cólera em Angola e os impactos dessa decisão da USAID, convidamos o Dr. Jeremias Agostinho, médico e mestre em saúde pública, para partilhar a sua visão sobre o tema.
A doença, nesse momento, representa o maior risco de saúde pública que nós temos. Nos últimos anos, a nossa preocupação esteve sempre centrada com os casos de malária, os casos de tuberculose e também de infecção por VIH-Sida. A forma como, em pouco menos de 2 meses, os casos de cólera vêm aumentando, acaba por representar, nessa altura, um dos maiores desafios que o país tem. É expectável que nesta fase o número de casos venha a aumentar.
De segunda a sexta-feira, das 20 às 21 horas locais, este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África.
Call us on +27 63 406 9126 and contribute to the conversation.
Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa on the move.
We are unpacking ritual killings on the African continent today, specifically the ritual killings of children, which seem to dominate these really, really unorthodox ways of killing. In fact, it seems more orthodox than usual here on the African continent, with the widespread belief in juju or witchcraft as a huge part of these ritual murders. We still have on the line with us to unpack this, unpacking a study, in fact, they conducted in Ghana and Kenya on who's doing ritual killings and why. That's doctoral researcher and lecturer at the Aberystwyth University, Emmanuel Sapong Owusu. That's Dr. Emmanuel Sapong Owusu there. Well, let's speak about your methodology in Ghana and Kenya in unpacking this particular study, Doctor. How exactly did you gain or draw this information on the ritual killings? And what did you see was a trend when it comes to ritual killings in these particular parts of the continent?
Okay, so at the moment, there is no data set on ritual murder or ritual child homicide in any part of Africa. So to get information and to analyze the information, you need to start somewhere. You need to start from scratch. And I realized that the only place I can get information for this study or to understand the ritual murder phenomenon is to use media reports. So I selected 8 of the most well-known and renowned media outlets in Ghana and Kenya, and I used such phrases to look for articles on ritual murder in these media outlets. So, for instance, in Kenya, I chose the Nation, which is the Daily Nation, Standard, the Star, and Kenya News Agency. In Ghana, I chose the Daily Graphic, the Ghanaian Times, the Daily Guide, and Manja Online. So these are powerful and well-known media outlets who have very renowned journalists who report on various topics around these countries. And so once I was able to retrieve all the articles that I could gather from 2012 and 2021, I then analyzed each single article that I retrieved, taking note of various information about the perpetrators and the victims, where it occurred, and everything. So after gathering all this information from these media reports, I was then able to analyze and determine the magnitude and the various characteristics of the individuals. So I relied considerably on media reports. To understand the findings that I gathered, the findings that I obtained from the media analysis, I interviewed 28 experts. Some of them were criminologists, sociologists, were experts in African studies, who actually contributed immensely by providing further information about the ritual phenomenon. And so with these two sources, I was able to come up with very incredible findings about ritual murder. Now you were asking the question as to what I found about all this. Yeah, the first thing I found that was quite consistent, and it was actually in every country, was that the most dominant perpetrators were males. About over 90% of the perpetrators were males. In fact, in Kenya, there was not a single female.
Wow.
In Ghana, we had about 5 or 6 females who participated, but their contribution or participation was minimal. I mean, they played minor roles in that, except one person whose role could be said to be major. And there was another thing that we realized, that about 55% of the victims of ritual murder were children. For instance, in Ghana, I analyzed about 160 articles, 136 articles in Ghana. And then these articles reported about 160 plus victims. Of the victims, about 58% or so were all children. In Kenya, 60+% of the victims of ritual murder were children. So that tells you that children are targeted most in ritual murder cases.
Doctor, do we know what? I'm sorry about that, but do we know what motivates these ritual killings? I mean, we can't just say it's, if we say it's witchcraft or juju or these ritual or traditional beliefs, that's really such an overview. But is there any particular reasons that motivate the perpetrators of particularly children ritual killings?
Absolutely. The major motivation is financial gain. Monetary gain. People want to get money. There's a theory that we call a strain theory. The strain theory says that if people are not able to achieve societal goals or society-defined or socially defined goals legitimately, they will commit crime to achieve it. In Africa, there has been this norm, or if you like, this culture where if you don't have money, you are not respected. And if you have money and you are even an idiot, or excuse me to use that word, or an illiterate, people will respect you. They will listen to what you say because you are rich. If you don't have it and you are the most intelligent person in your community, no one cares about your opinion or your views because you don't have money.
Yeah.
So now, having luxury, having houses and cars and all that comes with admiration and respect. Who doesn't want to be respected in society? So if by going to do this kind of ritual murder stuff, you will get money to buy cars and to buy houses and people will respect you, then why not? So that is one factor. So the strain theory is very much important here. And another factor is that there is something we call Sakawa, or in Nigeria, they will call the Yahoo Boys. The Yahoo Boys people are those who do internet fraud. Those who do fraud over the internet. These guys also rely on juju rituals to succeed in their scamming activities online. And so if you come to Ghana, many of the crimes, at least about 5% of the crimes, were committed by people who are involved in this media or online fraud, who rely on this.
So sorry there, Doctor. We do need to wrap up the conversation. We've run out of time. But, just quickly in under a minute, what needs to be done? Because we can't just look at this and say, yeah, it's happening and, let it be. What are the, what are some of the interventions that need to take place to lower the numbers of ritual killings?
No, so because we know that majority of the perpetrators are poor people who actually want money, the government should really try to improve the economic situation in the country. It is very difficult to achieve that, but then it is possible. They can come up with apprenticeship kind of a program where people who don't even have education will be able to learn something, some trade, to survive in life. So if the government is able to get these people some apprenticeship and they are able to get a skill that would enable them to earn a living, that will reduce the amount. There should also be a awareness campaign in various communities. Parents should be made to be aware that their society or the society they live in is not as safe as they think. So, parents should keep an eye on their children. In Africa, we get children running about without the supervision of any adult. That should stop. So, this is very important. And then the government should also try as much as possible to ensure that there is education on this subject in schools and others for people to disengage themselves from the belief in witchcraft, in juju and all that. So, these are some of the few things that could be done to stop it. There are a number of them as well, but because there's no time, I will not be able to go through all of them.
Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. I think there's so much to unpack on this particular conversation. It's unfortunate that we've run out of time, but we really appreciate you unpacking the study with us today.
You're welcome.
That's Dr. Emmanuel Sapong Owusu unpacking a study conducted in Ghana and Kenya on ritual killings. That's doctoral researcher and lecturer at the Aberystwyth University. It's 10:32 Central Africa time. So sorry for being late, Musibudi. Let's get our latest sports news.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Palesa. Good morning once again from the Sports Desk. Let's start with this. So a dream of an all-South African CAF Champions League final is still alive. This after Mamelodi Sundowns as well as Orlando Pirates getting ready to face off with North African opposition in the second leg of the qualifiers in Cairo, Egypt. So both matches, by the way, over the weekend in the first leg in Tshwane as well as Soweto having ended goalless against Pyramids FC for Orlando Pirates and goalless for Al Ahly against Mamelodi Sundowns. So Sundowns head coach Miguel Cardoso believes the Brazilians can beat Al Ahly despite playing in their own backyard in the return leg on Friday.
Of course, I know that Sundowns already won to Ahly several times. I know everything. And I still believe that we can beat them because we didn't lose with them. So there's a lot to be played still and a lot of believing capacity to be put on the pitch.
Now, despite not having lost a single game in their last 7 head-to-head encounters since 2021, Miguel Cardoso says they respect Al Ahly for what they have achieved in recent years when it comes to the CAF Champions League.
You should be respectful when you speak about who you have ahead of you, because we are speaking about a team that last 5 years played 5 finals. In 2021, they beat Kaizer Chiefs 3-0 in the final.
Right, we'll stay with football news. African football legend Samoa Gyan has urged players participating in this year's CAF African Schools Football Championship Continental Finals to actively pursue education and also have it support their talent. Gyan, who is one of Africa's greatest football exports, was speaking at the tournament draw held in Accra on Monday, where he was amongst other football greats invited by CAF for the 4-day tournament starting today and concluding on the 26th of April. Now, the CAF African Schools Football Championship in Ghana will also see the tournament host nation Ghana taking on zonal champions from across CAF's zonal unions in both the boys as well as the girls under 15 age categories to determine the season's continental champions. Now, while the tournament, which is a first in world football, is an exceptional platform for players to showcase their talents, Gyan has urged them to give equal attention to their education as well as have it support their talents. The CAF African Schools Football Championship, CAF, is rolling out a series of educational programs that are designed to educate as well as capacitate various football stakeholders as part of CAF's holistic approach to youth football development on the African continent. On to tennis news now. Britain's Jack Draper says Yannick Sinner does not deserve to be hated as the world number one prepares for a comeback from a 3-month doping ban. Draper is A long-time friend of Sinner who spent several days practicing with the Italian in Monte Carlo just last week. So Sinner was banned from the sport in February after reaching a settlement with World Doping Agency WADA over 2 positive drug tests just last year. The 3-time major champion is able to return to competitive action from the 5th of May and plans to make his comeback at the Italian Open in Rome. Sinner had previously been cleared of any wrongdoing by an independent panel after testing positive for the banned substance cluster ball in March of 2024. It accepted that he had inadvertently contaminated it by his physiotherapist whilst treating a cut on his hand with an over-the-counter spray that contained cluster ball. Now, Sinner agreed to a 3-month ban by WADA to settle the case and not go to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. But the timing of the suspension, which meant Sinner did not miss a single Grand Slam tournament and will return to action at May's French Open, was criticised by some as conveniently timed. And finally, in golf news, newly crowned Masters champion Rory McIlroy will have unfinished business when the Open Championship returns to Royal Portrush. That's according to RNA Chief Executive Mark Dabon. Now, the Northern Irishman McIlroy, who won the Masters competition just a few weeks ago at the Augusta National earlier on this month to complete a Grand Slam career, missed the cut when the Open was held at the Dunlace Links for the first time in 68 years in 2019. So on Tuesday, Dabon announced that this year's championship, which starts on the 17th of July and concludes on the 20th of July, will be the biggest sporting event held in Northern Ireland, with about 278,000 fans expected to watch that tournament. Now, this year's Open will also be the biggest held outside of St Andrews in Scotland and is expected to also generate $230 million of economic impact. It's 10:37 a.m. Central African Time. That concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
My name is Neto, N-E-T-O Chamani. Osiyatiko, Nengezimo, Mkhanju, Phandle kunjani moyani. Voko Tendele. Africa at Play, Asteleli Siyashaya. Africa's velvet voice is in the house. Africa at Play is a place to be, where we speak all things sport and music, from the African continent to the rest of the world. We speak to your bundles of joy in sport, 12-year-olds and below, teenagers in sport. And we speak to elite athletes, administrators, coaches, and all the behind-the-scenes stakeholders of sport and music. Africa at Play, Asteleli Siyashaya. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
No time to waste. Be on the move with Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa and.
It's 10:38 Central Africa time. Thank you so much, Musibudi, for the sports. Let's get our latest business once again with Eva Chiba.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Palesa. South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile is today expected to deliver a keynote address at a roundtable discussion on the 2025-26 budget tabling, including the adoption of the fiscal framework and revenue proposals. The gathering, to be hosted by the Financial and Fiscal Commission, known as FFC, will be held in Cape Town under the theme Charting Fiscal Pathways, Collaborative Action for Equitable Growth and FFC Recommendation. The gathering will be attended by policymakers, business, civil society and organised labour, among others. The fiscal framework implementation is expected to start by the 1st of next month. In a bid to promote a culture of entrepreneurship in South Africa, a free 5-week online challenge has been launched for youth aged 9 to 16 years old. Economist Davi Rutt and Durban musician Majozi will host this entrepreneurship challenge through the COA Academy. Children from around the country are being encouraged to take part in the challenge, with registration closing on the 1st of May. COA Academy Principal Mark Anderson says it will equip young learners with the skills needed to create and sustain successful businesses.
One of the things we're very aware of in traditional education is that a lot of students feel a real disconnect between what they see in the textbook and what they see in the real world around them. The Entrepreneurship Challenge is designed in a way that's not just teaching important information and knowledge, but actually giving the students an opportunity to practice that in the real world and to exercise those skills and then reflect on them. And that helps our students to move past a fear of failure and to actually learn to see this as a growing opportunity.
South African lender Capitec Bank has reported a 30% rise in annual profit as net interest income grew by double digits. Capitec, one of the fastest growing South African banks targeting low-income earners, said that headline earnings, a key metric in South Africa for the year ending on February 28th, rose to just over $738 million. In other news, the IMF has warned that among advanced economies, the US will be the hardest hit by a significant slowdown in growth driven by President Donald Trump's tariffs. After setting a baseline import tax of 10% and much higher on dozens of countries earlier this month, Trump abruptly put the steeper levies on hold for 90 days for countries to try and negotiate less stringent rates. The BBC's Michael Fury reports.
In a sobering report, the International Monetary Fund warned that the decision to raise tariffs to levels exceeding the highs reached during the Great Recession marked the start of a new era, one that would slow global growth and hit the world's largest economy hardest. The IMF slashed its US growth forecast by nearly 1% in its quarterly report on the outlook for the global economy, adding that inflation would also be higher. The Chinese economy is likely to suffer from higher tariffs too, although to a lesser degree.
And lastly, truck maker Volvo reported a bigger than expected fall in the first quarter profit today and lowered its North American truck market outlook, pointing to increased uncertainty around tariffs and their impact on global trade. The Swedish group said it now sees the North American heavy truck market at 275,000 new vehicles this year. Its previous forecast from January was for 300,000 new heavy trucks. It repeated a market outlook for 290,000 new heavy trucks in Europe, adding that, however, the current market conditions mean forecasts are subject to significant uncertainty. Operating profit was $1.3 billion against a year earlier at $18.2 billion. Taking a look at your financial indicators, $1 is trading in Nigeria at 1,000 naira 603. In Botswana, it's 13 bula 60. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 88. And in Zambia, it's 28 kwacha 43. To the BRICS countries now, where $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 77. In Russia, 81 rubles 30. India, 85 rupees 16. China, 7 yuan 31. And in South Africa, it's 18 rand 62 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and will cost you 87 for the euro. Looking at your commodities, gold is trading at $3,341, platinum $959 per ounce, while Brent crude oil stands at $68.03 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I'm Eva Chipa.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Get set and be ready to go. On the Move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
We're going to some music right now. This one. Kuhle on that one, right here on Channel Africa, giving you the African perspective, not just the conversations, but also the music. We just had a conversation on ritual killings. You can participate on that one on our number +27 63 406 9126, or you can comment on our live stream coming to you live on all our social media platforms at Channel Africa 1. Find us there on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, on X, as well as on Facebook. It's 10:50 Central Africa time. We're going into what's happening on TikTok. Ben, have you ever heard the phrase, "I'm so hungry I could eat a horse"?
No.
You've never heard of that?
Never.
You know, that's how I feel usually when I come back from the gym. Gym makes you so hungry, and I can actually go back home and say, "I'm so hungry I could eat a horse." That's a very popular phrase. I'm sure some of you have heard it out there. "I'm so hungry I could eat a horse." But it seems like parents on TikTok have reinvented that particular phrase in a plot to prank their little ones at home. And it's so funny because, you know, some of the most hilarious pranks are associated with children, or hilarious trends are associated with children, because children are so, you know, honest. Children are so honest. They'll give you their really pure, their really unadulterated comment on any particular thing, and that can be quite funny. So what parents on TikTok are doing is they'll take, you know, quite an unsuspecting video of their kids, and they say to them, "I'm so hungry I could eat a kid." And you should see the shock on their faces sometimes. Say, "What do you mean you could eat a kid?" So I looked into this trend, and let me tell you, I went down a rabbit hole of a lot of videos, about hundreds of videos from around the world, with kids' reactions when their parents say to them, "I'm so hungry I could eat a kid."
Yeah, I can chop you in pieces. Ritual killing.
Exactly.
By your parents.
Speaking about these ritual killings, well, at least this is not a real killing, but it's certainly quite a great comedic relief. Let's hear some of the reactions from these particular kids, from, you know, their parents, or saying, "I'm so hungry I could eat a kid."
"Oh, I'm so hungry I can actually eat a kid."
You know, let's talk about it.
Okay,
You're about to eat a kid or anyone. I'll bring food for you so you can eat it. So we'll do a fight today.
All right, I'll bring food for you.
Yeah.
That was. I love the fact that that kid shows quite a lot of maturity. It feels like that kid is actually raising the parents.
Yeah, I'll sort you out,
Says,
Mom.
let's talk about it. That's the first thing. Let's talk about it.
Very mature.
Very mature.
Yeah.
Let's hear this reaction.
"I'm so hungry, I could eat a kid right now."
No. You're gonna let bleed.
Who's gonna bleed? You gonna bleed. I'm so hungry, I could eat a kid. So which kid can I eat?
You can't Milan.
I can eat Milan?
No, you cannot eat my sister. You cannot eat nobody.
Oh. What I'm supposed to eat?
You are girls.
So what I'm supposed to eat?
You're gonna eat
some spaghetti.
Yeah, you don't eat nobody.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You cannot eat my sister.
You're gonna eat spaghetti.
That's quite protective there. You cannot. But why is she assuming that the sister is the one that's going to be eaten? What about her?
It's not her. Definitely not me.
It's definitely not me. So you cannot eat my sister. There are actually quite a few funny ones where those who have siblings and the parent says, "I'm so hungry I could eat a kid." They say, "Well, eat that one." So it's just not me, but you can eat that kid over there. That's a ready meal for you.
Yeah, if my child was old enough, I would try this prank on them, but no, he can't speak back.
Not yet. Well, this has reached the shores of Africa, of course, and
really?
there's some really great reactions as well from some South African kids. Let's hear this.
Mommy,
I'm so hungry, I could eat a kid.
you can eat me? No, Mommy, until I am food. No, Mommy, I'm not the food. That's the English. That's the English, right?
No. You're right.
No.
Good one, Gandhi.
It's wrong.
Which one?
He say you can eat your food.
I am not a food. I am not a food.
Me? You can't eat me. It can't be.
Definitely, food is a noun now.
So if you're a parent out there with a young one that can talk, what do you think their reaction? In fact, let us know. Maybe ask them, I'm so hungry I could eat a kid, and maybe let us know what their reactions are like.
Yeah, no, you don't want to do that. Because some of them, these kids, you don't know what reaction you'll get from them.
You'll never know, but that's the beauty of it, because unlike adults, sometimes pranks seem, and that's the worry that you always have about social media, right? That pranks sometimes, or these social media things, don't seem authentic. So one thing about children, they are always authentic. They're not really actors. They say what they mean, and they give you that honest, authentic reaction.
Yeah, we love the little ones, definitely. That's a cool one. What's up on TikTok today?
Yeah.
But I always find it intriguing that you always find these offbeat things.
It's all interesting. That's my algorithm. It goes from like here
bizarre
to
A bizarre.
to all the way to Z.
Bizarre to more bizarre.
100%. It's 10:55 Central Africa time. Let us know what you think at Channel Africa 1. That's our TikTok handle, and you can engage with us and all our content there. For now, let's go back to the music.
Download the SABC app and take Channel.
murders. It is quite worrying, isn't it? That your kid could be just playing and enjoying their life in 1 minute, and then next minute be seen as sort of an avenue to someone else's riches and fame, I suppose.
Yeah, the thing is, what do you do as a parent? Do you allow your child to play outside? I know as Africans, we allow our kids to play outside.
Yeah,
and
a lot.
we were raised by the streets, pretty much. And, we are, well, I don't know how things are now, but growing up for me, your community was your community. You'd be safe in your community and you never felt threatened at all. You know what I mean? And so for me, that's something that is a question mark now. Do you let your kids go? Let them play in the streets, let them play in the community, let them play in the compound? Or should you be more wary of those types of escapades that the little ones get through? Because they really do kind of wander off, and it was okay to wander off back in the day. I used to wander off to
all the
a
time.
different part of my town, and just walk and travel and go to see things in different parts of the city, and then come back a little bit later in the evening. But right now, out of sight, out of mind. And
but
never
I think
to return.
It also depends where this is happening, because the more modern settings, it's hard to find children sort of playing in the streets in the more suburban areas. In the townships, kids still do play in the streets, but also because there aren't really much avenues for children to release that energy in spaces like the townships and the rural areas, which makes it hard to say that my kid cannot play in the street, because essentially what you're saying is that my kid can't play at all. Where else do they have to go?
Yeah. That's it.
Well, let us know your thoughts on these ritual killings, and do we need more information, especially when it comes to the fact that human bodies cannot give you riches. We'll continue that one in a bit, but right now it's the top of the hour. It's 11 a.m. Central Africa time. Once again, Olele Nzinzi is back with our latest news.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Palesa. Looking at your top stories, Ghanaian President John Mahama suspends the country's Supreme Court Chief Justice, and diplomats from Europe, the US and Ukraine to discuss the Russia-Ukraine ceasefire. Your latest news, greetings to our listeners. Ghanaian President John Mahama has suspended the country's Supreme Court Chief Justice, a move that marks a first in the country's history. An investigation has been launched and 3 undisclosed petitions have been filed, making allegations against Gertrude Tokono, calling for her permanent removal. Elizabeth Mapari reports.
Chief Justices in Ghana enjoy security of tenure, meaning they can only be removed from office on a few grounds, which include incompetence and misbehavior. The content of the petitions has not been made public, and she's yet to comment, while Ghana's former Attorney General has claimed her suspension is an attempt to undermine the judiciary. Tokono is Ghana's 3rd female Chief Justice and was nominated in 2023 by former President Nana Akufo-Addo. According to news agency Reuters, Tokono survived a removal request earlier this year when former President Akufo-Addo said a petition to have her dismissed had several deficiencies.
South Africa's National Police Commissioner General Fani Masemula has assured the nation that President Cyril Ramaphosa and the Deputy President Paul Mashatile are in safe hands. This comes as Deputy President Paul Mashadile's convoy was shot at earlier this month. Masemula has confirmed there was a shooting incident and an extensive investigation is still underway, with the ballistics report already concluded. Masemula says crime intelligence is conducting its regular risk assessment on both President Ramaphosa and the Deputy President Mashatile. He says members of the Presidential Protection Service are highly trained and have the necessary expertise to avert any risk and threat. Meanwhile, South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile has broken his silence on the alleged assassination attempt that took place in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg. Speaking to the media, Mashatile emphasized that decisions around the security of the President and Deputy President fall under the country's security structures, not their personal discretion. He confirmed that the incident is now under police investigation, with authorities revealing that a high-level probe is in progress and a ballistic report has already been completed.
The President and the Deputy President don't determine their security. It's an assessment that is done by the security cluster. At the moment, we are convinced that both the President and Deputy President do have adequate security. If they think that they need to beef it up, they will do so. That issue is taken care of by the state. You must have heard that the Presidential Protection and the police are jointly looking into the matter. They are investigating. And when they are done, they will tell us what actually happened.
The World Food Programme has suspended malnutrition treatment for 650,000 malnutritioned women and children in Ethiopia this week due to severe funding shortages. The UN agency says millions more are at risk of losing access to aid. WFP gets financing from 15 to 20 donors, including the United States, but many of them have cut funding this year. The agency has received exemptions from U.S. President Donald Trump's aid freeze that has disrupted humanitarian work around the world. More than 10 million people in Ethiopia are gravely short of food, including 3 million displaced by conflict and extreme weather conditions, as well as refugees from war-torn neighboring Sudan. Lastly, diplomats from Europe and the United States and Ukraine will today meet in London to discuss a ceasefire in the 3-year war between Russia and Ukraine. White House says the President Donald Trump is increasingly frustrated by the process. The BBC's James Lendale.
The pace of diplomatic efforts to end the war in Ukraine is quickening, but there's little clarity about where they're heading or whether they'll succeed. Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, would travel to Moscow this week for his 4th meeting with President Putin. All this amid reports that Russia may be ready to halt its invasion along current front lines and give up some territorial ambitions in return for US recognition of Russian sovereignty over Crimea. President Zelensky ruled out recognizing Crimea as Russian territory.
Recapping on your top stories, Ghanaian President John Mahama has suspended the country's Supreme Court Chief Justice, a move that marks a first in the country's history. An investigation has been launched and 3 undisclosed petitions have been filed, making allegations against Gertrude Tokono. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
We are in hour 3 of this journey right here on the Move. Hop on, and I hope you've been on, in fact, since the first hour. But if you've just joined us, thank you so much for being a part of the Channel Africa family. You've missed out on a lot, but don't worry, there's still more conversation ahead of us in this hour of the show right here on www.channelafrica.co.za, on the SABC Plus app, but also on our audio bouquets, DSTV, channel 802 and OpenView 628. We're going into our health feature called Live Well in this hour of the show, and we're discussing something that's actually more common than we think. In fact, it's rising on the African continent. We'll be speaking about dementia.
Dementia is an interesting one, isn't it? Because at times we think people are crazy because of their forgetfulness, or they are bewitched because of their forgetfulness, or just leave them, they're just getting older. That's how they get.
And that's the thing, that's 2 sides, right? In fact, there's so many sides, as you said. Some people say, old people get like that, so that's normal, without actually placing the fact that it's an actual health conditions. But as we were speaking about ritual killing earlier, this is very closely associated because, some of the people who have dementia are often said they're either been, witchcrafted or whatever. They've been what? They've been
bewitched.
They've been bewitched.
Come on, English.
Sorry, the English is running away.
Data bundles.
They've
Depleted.
been bewitched, or they are witches themselves, because sometimes people with dementia, so they either said to be bewitched or said to be witches themselves. Because in African societies, sometimes if we don't understand something, it's easier to associate it with witchcraft, or associated with some of those juju stereotypes. So we're going into that conversation in this hour of the show. We'll be finding out from our expert in this hour, really unpacking dementia for us, what it is, how it presents itself, and how we can really remove the stigma and misinformation around this illness.
Yeah, man, we're looking forward to that. My grandmother actually had dementia, It was a lot to manage. It was a lot of work, actually. She would just walk off. And she would be just, you're like, Granny, where did she go? And it's pretty serious, right? It's like, how? She's not in the house. Where is she? She's gone. Now you have to go looking for her. Now, if you know a setup of a South African township, they are huge. And to walk around looking for her was a mission. It was a huge mission. And somehow, also, what do you do there? Because some families don't have the resources to have a nurse to look after them.
Yeah.
You can't take them to a home because there's not enough resources to do so. So you're like, how do you manage that situation? And, I have to give my aunt like a whole lot of like kudos and a lot of love and just send out my love to her virtually because she was managing that situation. And it's not easy. It is not easy. And people around, they think this person is just normal because they don't show any signs of being ill. They don't show any signs of being lost. The person thinks they're walking in the right direction. They feel like they're going somewhere. But she was just walking, and she thought she knew where she was walking, but she had no clue where she was going.
And in fact, I think many people in African families have actually experienced in some form or another a family member or someone in the community who has dementia, but without really naming it, right? I had an uncle as well who was by the time retired for at least 15 years, but got in the car and went to work like a normal day at work. And that's when, he was diagnosed with dementia because people were like, okay, what are you doing? He went to his desk and he had not been at work for a very long time by then, but presented at work as he usually used to do, put on his clothes and went to work. And that's when people realized actually something wrong here. Something is wrong here.
Yeah, you always have to introduce yourself to that one member of the family who always forgets you.
Yes.
Coco, it's Ben, it's me.
Yeah.
From where? Whose child are you?
Yes.
And then you have to pretty much go through the steps of remembrance, right? And making them actually remember who you are. And it's a challenge for families to be the one who is forgotten, especially if you have a close relationship with that person with dementia. You have to kind of remind them who you are, remind them of the memories. It's not easy.
Well, let's go into that conversation in about a minute. It's 11:11 Central Africa time. Stay with us. This is On the Move.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge aka Binal Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Get set and be ready to go. On the Move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
It's time for Live Well, our health feature here on the Move. Today we're unpacking dementia, and dementia seems to be tightening its grip on the African continent, a growing health crisis that remains largely misunderstood, stigmatized, and often overlooked. Ben and I were just speaking a few minutes ago about some of our experiences within our family settings of family members who had dementia. Families do struggle in silence as loved ones exhibit signs of memory loss, confusion, or personality changes, frequently dismissing these symptoms as a normal part of aging. And in some cases, cultural beliefs attribute dementia to supernatural forces like being bewitched or being a witch yourself in some communities. And this delays crucial medical intervention. So we're unpacking, dementia, the stigma around dementia, but also the misinformation that prevents early diagnosis and access to care. Joining us on the line is Dr. Tumi Manoko, who is a neurologist who's going to help us understand this illness better. Thank you so much, Dr. Manoko, for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Ben and I, as we're speaking about, some of our own personal experiences of people with dementia, I also realized something that in many of our communities, those who do even have ever heard of the word dementia, have sort of confused it with its close relation to Alzheimer's. So, is there a difference between Alzheimer's and dementia?
Okay. Thank you again for having me, Palesa. Well, just to give you a brief intro on dementia itself, essentially it's a general term used to describe a decline in a person's mental abilities that is severe enough to interfere with their daily living, or it just interferes with independent living for that individual. There's many different types of dementia, and Alzheimer's is actually the one of the commonest dementias. I think that's the one that people think about when they think about dementia. It's one of the dementias that we know of that have been described very well in clinical practice, but there's many other types of dementias. Alzheimer's is just one of them.
So, dementia is not one single illness. It's not one single disease. Unpack this for us. I think that's information that many of us don't know. What is dementia?
Yeah. So essentially, dementia is when your mental abilities aren't functioning good enough to allow you to live an independent life, or allow you to live a life where you are able to function appropriately in society. It affects many aspects of your thinking, essentially. And one of the aspects that can be affected with dementia is that it can affect your memory. So these are the people that very often than not are forgetful, and this being forgetful can be severe enough. You find that these people are the ones that get lost. A person gets out to go buy a loaf of bread at the market, and when they're supposed to go back to their house, they don't know where the house is because they've forgotten it. They can't even open their phones because of now forgotten the passwords. So memory is a very big aspect of it. But like I said, it's beyond your memory. It affects all parts of a human's thinking. And this would include your personality, for example. So you may find that family members will say that this person or this patient is just not who they were before. They were just socially withdrawn. They don't interact with people. They don't want to engage in social gatherings. And another important thing, or another factor that can be affected with dementia, is that it can also affect a person's thinking and reasoning abilities. So you find that people will struggle with even the most basic of things, like feeding yourself, like eating yourself, or bathing yourself, or preparing a pot of food for your family. That you find that people with dementia are not able to carry out these steps that allow you to perform such basic activities. And with progression, you may find that people will then go on to start having these hallucinations and delusions, and where they find that they can't even interact with their loved ones because they don't recognize their loved ones, or they think that their loved ones are out to hurt them or something like that.
Yeah, because this thing happens very randomly. It's something that you don't even expect as a family member when you see someone that you love going through it, Dr. Tumi. What is the cause of it?
There isn't a single causative agent that will say, okay, definitely this is the one thing that caused the patient to have this dementia. It's a genetic aspects that are involved, as well as your social upbringing that also could be associated in being the driving force of dementia. For example, we do know that smoking can be a risk factor for developing dementia, or just a sedentary lifestyle, or people that have a lower education level are found in literature to have a much more increased risk of having dementia. But with that said, there's also things that can be protective, that can protect us from having dementia, like exercising, healthy living, reading, and a high level of education. And there are certain things that are obviously out of our control. There are some genetic factors, the genes that a person may have that predispose you to having dementia, which is something that now you can't really, we can't really prevent that.
Yeah. And I think the biggest issue, especially if we're speaking about the African context, is the stigmatization of dementia, particularly because not a lot of people know about it. How common is dementia? How common is dementia diagnosis in our African communities?
It's actually quite common, and the reason why the numbers may seem as though they're low is because of what you touched on, that there's delayed presentations to neurological centers with this type of problem. And the reason for there being a delayed presentations, number one, could be the fact that people don't recognize it as a disease. For example, people may just dismiss a person being forgetful as regular aging or normal aging, and so they don't present to the clinic or to the neurological centers.
Right.
Or they may just dismiss it as, oh, they're just being moody, they have a horrible personality, they're just changing. Meanwhile, that's actually one of the symptoms of dementia. So the numbers may seem low just because of a no presentation with this illness.
And that's the saddest part, right? Because then these people who do have dementia cannot get the necessary help and assistance that they need, but it can further stigmatize them within their families and their communities at large. Stay with us on the line, Dr. Dumi. We're going to take a short break and then come back to continue speaking about dementia. We're chatting to neurologist Dr. Dumi Manuko about dementia in our African communities. Stay with us.
Ahoy, matey!
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa 1. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa 1. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Get set and be ready to go. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
I'll tell you one thing. When it comes to health, you never know. You never know what's happening with yourself. You never know what's happening with the people around you. You just never know. I'll tell you personally, I thought I was all healthy. I was doing relatively okay. I never go to the hospital. You're just fine. But you just never know until something dramatic actually happens. And that's why we do our Live Well feature to help each other on the journey of health. It's not an easy one. Today we're speaking about this one, dementia, an umbrella term for a range of brain disorders that impair memory. And to help us on this one, we have our guest, Dr. Dumi Manuko, who's a neurologist. Dr. Dumi, can you see this coming, whether in yourself or in someone else?
Can you see it coming? Very early on, there may be telltale signs. For example, I talked about being forgetful quite easily, right? The reason to be a red flag, a reason to be aware that actually this may be dementia, not just regular being forgetful, is that anything that happens in your life should not force you now to have a poor quality of life, or should not force you to miss aspects of your life. For example, if I forget my key one day and I'm able to find it, that's okay, that's fine. But if now I start missing work several times because I forget where my keys are, or if now I can't
I'm getting worried about myself, doctor.
If it affects the quality of your life and it's severe enough to affect your quality of life, that's a red flag. That would be an excellent reason to go present to a clinician.
Okay.
Or if you can't, you're having difficulty getting the steps that are required to make a cup of tea, that's alarming. People may dismiss that it's nothing, but that's reason enough for you to present to get it checked.
Okay. Let's also look at what other signs should you look out for in the person themselves. Can you look at it, maybe see observations from outside? If someone does have dementia, what should you be looking out for?
You know, a lot of the times it's very difficult for family members to pick it up very early because of just how slowly the process is. It's very slow. It's like imagining you sitting in the living room and you're watching TV and you keep turning the volume up, 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 up. By the time it's at 100, you yourself that's been sitting in the room don't even realize it. But somebody else from the outside may say, hey, it's too loud, or it's a pot is burning. I'm sure everybody's experienced this when they're sitting in the kitchen and the pot is burning, but they can't smell that there's something burning. Somebody else that's coming from the outside can come in and say, hey, something is not right here. It's similar to dementia. The process is so slow, so slow that family members have a difficult time picking up the early telltale signs.
Okay, so once you diagnosed with dementia, let me track back because, we haven't looked at how you actually get diagnosed. Can you help us with that?
Okay, so when we diagnose dementia, it actually is one of the longest clinical consultations that a person will probably have to be engaged in.
Mhm.
We would expect a patient together with a family member, preferably a family member that lives with the patient, to come give us an account of what has been happening in the home. Because usually by the time that patients present to us, they don't remember. So we're going to need that collateral from a family member that knows the patient very well.
Very
We take a
tricky, yeah.
detailed history, yeah. We take a detailed history of how they've been, what they've been saying, their behaviors across social gatherings, and their reasoning skills. And then there's also there's also tests that we run, clinical tests that we run by the bedsides. There's a number of them that are designed specifically to test a person's cognition. One of them is called the MOCA. So we go through that with the patient, testing their cognitive abilities, and then we go on to do a physical examination, looking for potential if there's anything that may be aggravating the dementia or making it worse, or maybe contributing to the dementia itself. Most of the time, dementia is a clinical diagnosis. So after that consultation, we'll be able to have a diagnosis. And then after that, there are some bloods and imaging, like your CT brains or MRI brains, imaging essentially of the brain that we'll have to do. These things are able to aid in, for example, with regards to the imaging, they'll tell us what type of dementia we may be dealing with. And then it may tell us if there's other aggravating thing, or if the dementia is like occurring as a secondary to another disorder. Or like, for example, I'll give you, we know that Alzheimer's is a primary dementia, but then there are certain things like if a person has vitamin B12, they may have, that may aggravate their dementia. And we know that as people age, their diet becomes quite, we always joke about old people preferring toast and tea
Yeah.
with no enough nutrients. So if you don't have enough nutrients in your system, that can also contribute to dementia. So that may be the one maybe thing that we can try to control.
Mhm. Okay, and then are there treatments for it?
There's a lot of drugs that are coming up in the American, European world that we as South Africans are also trying to keep up with regards to a curative treatment for dementia. Unfortunately, we don't have that, but we do have drug treatments as well as social type treatments that are designed to aid, to basically improve the patient's quality of life. So we acknowledge that even though we're not going to give you something that's going to treat the dementia, get you back to where you are, but we can give something that will sort of help and make life easy living for the patient and for the people that are taking care of the patient.
Mhm. Dr. Tumi, in terms of support, I know the people with dementia need a lot of structural support on how to get through their day. And I know some families on the African continent can't afford a day nurse or an evening nurse. It's tough for many families. What would you suggest for our listeners? How do they create that support system around someone who does have dementia?
Benjamin, you're right. A lot of the times in an African setting, there are limited funds, so people can't afford to go to nursing homes. But a lovely thing about the African community is the sense of ubuntu that they have. So if the person that usually lives with the patient is not able, usually they will get burnt out. That's quite normal for a person to get tired, to get burnt out. There's other family members that can hop in to come support and help the family. I always say that dementia, sure, it's a diagnosis for the patient, but actually it affects the entire family. It's a diagnosis that affects the whole family. If one person in the family has dementia, everybody's affected by it. So families pulling in together to assist that person that's living with the family is great. In addition to that, we do in our hospitals have social support for people that have family members with living with dementia. We have social workers in place that do a wonderful job with assisting these families. We have psychologists also that equip family members with the strength and abilities to deal with their family members that are living with dementia. And in certain circumstances, we do come to a point where we realize that, we've come to the end of the road here. This family member actually does need help, and we are able to interact with the social services or social workers to find placement for such people.
Well, thank you so much for giving us your help on this one, because it's something that we don't really understand and we don't know how to navigate as families. Just as a wrap up, how do we relate to people with dementia? Do we spend time with them? Do we sit with them? Do we hang out with them? Or do we limit certain activities that they might not be able to adjust to anymore?
The thing one of the most important thing with dealing with dementia or supporting a person that has dementia is to have a routine that works out for the patient and for the family members as well, so that if they get into a routine, it's sort of and there isn't like abrupt changes or anything like that. It does make things a bit easier for them.
And when we speak to them, remind them who we are. Would you give us some advice on that? Just those nuances on how we relate to them.
Oh, no, absolutely. The people with dementia, there are certain periods where they may be lucid. So that, for example, if a person has dementia, they have Alzheimer's, and now they have trouble with remembering their family members, there may be a time, you can't really tell in a day, where they may actually remember that, oh, that's my daughter. So during that time, engage with them, show them, yes, I am your daughter. Sing that favorite song that they used to love. Give them that draw a picture that they used to love looking at when you were younger. Just something to, just to make them happy and remember who they are. And that actually is so important, not only for the patient themselves, but for the family member as well, to have those moments with their loved one. So I would encourage that if the opportunity comes about, just do go back and do the things that the patient used to love, but also to remember not to force it onto the patient.
Okay, I was about to say that, and because you were saying when they actually remember, take that opportunity. So I was about to ask, don't force it out of them. Dr. Tony,
force it.
Yeah, we have to wrap it up. We've run out of time. It's so fantastic that you gave us this brief understanding, but you are very elaborate around it. Where can we find you on platforms, or maybe if we want to get your expertise?
No, unfortunately, I'm not on social media currently.
Yeah,
but
when you are a professional, no. You have to come find me. Well, Dr. Dumi, anyway, it's pretty cool chatting to you. Thank you for joining us here on Channel Africa.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for this talk about dementia. It's so crucial, so important.
All right, that's Dr. Dumi Manugo, who's a neurologist. It's 11:32 Central African time. Let's quickly move on to get our wrap-up of our morning sports.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And a very good morning from the sports desk. I am Musibudi Makura with the latest sports news. At the SAWA's dream for an all-South African CAF Champions League final is indeed still alive, as Mamelodi Sundowns as well as Orlando Pirates ready themselves for the semi-final second legs in Cairo, Egypt this coming Friday. So both Sundowns as well as Pirates played out to goalless draws against Al Ahly as well as Pyramids FC at home over the weekend. Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoso believes the Brazilians can beat the Egyptian side Al Ahly, the defending champions as well, despite playing in their backyard this coming Friday.
Of course, I know that Sundowns already won to Ahly several times. I know everything. And I still believe that we can beat them because we didn't lose with them. So there's a lot to be played still and a lot of belief and capacity to be put it on the pitch.
Now, despite not having a single game, lost a single game in their last head-to-head 7 matches between Al Ahly as well as Sundowns, dating back to 2021, Miguel Cardoso says they have to respect Al Ahly for what they have achieved on the African continent.
You should be respectful when you speak about who you have ahead of you, because we are speaking about a team that last 5 years played 5 finals. In 2021, they beat the Kaiser Chiefs 3-0 in the final.
For the field now, Mateus Nunes scored in the 94th minute to give Manchester City a priceless victory over fellow top 5 contenders Aston Villa at the Etihad Stadium and move third in a battle for a UEFA Champions League place. Now, what could be a preview for next month's FA Cup final looked set to end at level as City struggled to find a way through the Villa defence after Marcus Rashford cancelled out Bernardo Silva's early opener from the penalty spot. But in the 4th minute of added time, substitute Jeremy Doku then skipped past Axel Disasi down the left, then delivered a brilliant low cross with from the outside of his right boot, which rolled perfectly through the 6-yard box for Nunes, who drilled his first Premier League goal of the season into the bottom corner. It was a familiar feeling for Villa, who have now lost an incredible 15 successive league games against Manchester City. City are now third on the Premier League table, 4 points clear of Aston Villa, as well as Chelsea, who have a game in hand and remain just outside of the top 5. Pep Guardiola, manager of Manchester City, reflecting on that performance from last night.
Of course it's important. We don't have to be a scientist to realize that we play against Aston Villa, one of the best teams. We saw the games against Newcastle, saw the game, both games against PSG, the top form, the quality, the manager, and everything. So it's an extraordinary team, but we did perform like we were in the past. The commitment, we concede not much, and we didn't create much neither, but we control most of the game. The back four again have been amazing. All the players. So in terms of qualification for the Champions League, for the points, of course, it's important.
On to tennis news now. 4-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka crashed out of the Madrid Open in the first round on Tuesday with a 6-4, 2-6, 6-4 defeat by Lucia Bronzetti. Now, the Japanese, former world number 1, ranked 50th in the world at the moment, battled back with a strong second set after losing the first, but eventually came out short against her determined Italian opponent. Osaka, who's still finding form after a 15-month break from tennis and also last played at the Miami Open in March, secured 2 break points in the 4th game of the first set, which she spun. Bronzetti broke in the 7th and served it out before Osaka responded strongly. The 27-year-old then secured 3 break points on serve and secured 1 to force a decider. Osaka then immediately conceded a break, as well as, despite wrestling back on serve at 3-all, when she took her 5th break point of the game, was broken herself again straight away. So Bronzetti triumphed when Osaka slipped as she tried to reach a cross-court shot. The Italian will now face American world number 5 Madison Keys in the second round of the Madrid Open. And finally, in basketball news, MBB Basketball Club veteran and player Nao Motiba is confident his side will strong showing during their debut Basketball Africa League Season 5, which comprises of 12 teams from across the African continent. So the Blue Sharks will be representing South Africa at the BAL in the NAL conference that is scheduled from the 17th to the 25th of May in Kigali, Rwanda, where they will also challenge the likes of the Nairobi City Thunder from Kenya, Al Ahly Tripoli of Egypt, as well as the host side APR. Speaking to Channel Africa Sport, Motiba says that they want to play top quality opposition out of the country to put them in good stead ahead of the NAL conference.
The one thing that is obviously outstanding is for us to play as many games as we can together. And we're lucky that we are actually in season, so we're looking at about 14 to 15 games before we get to Kigali. Obviously, the other thing is we want to play against top quality opposition, so we are hoping that we will be able. We are playing in a tournament in 2 weeks' time where we've got teams from outside of South Africa, which will obviously put us through the test.
Right, so that's a wrap of your morning sports news right here in Channel Africa. For any sports stories you would like to share with us, just send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. And join the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa on the move.
Thank you, Musibudi. Once again, time for our latest in business with Eva Chipa.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Palesa. South Africa's headline consumer inflation fell more sharply than expected in March to 2.7% year-on-year from 3.2% in February. Economist polls had forecast annual inflation would slow to 2.9%, just below the bottom of the South African Reserve Bank's 3% to 6% target range. The central bank last month left its main lending rate unchanged after 3 consecutive rate cuts, citing risks stemming from US President Donald Trump's global trade war and the country's disputed national budget. In month-on-month terms, inflation was at 0.4% in March, down from 0.9% in February. South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile is today expected to deliver a keynote address at a roundtable discussion on the 2025-26 budget tabling, including the adoption of the fiscal framework and revenue proposals. The gathering, to be hosted by the Financial and Fiscal Commission, will be held in Cape Town under the theme Charting Fiscal Pathways, Collaborative Action and Equitable Growth for the FFC recommendation. The gathering will be attended by policymakers, business, civil society and organised labour, among others. The fiscal framework implementation is expected to start by the first of next month. In a bid to promote a culture of entrepreneurship in South Africa, a free 5-week online challenge has been launched for youth aged between 9 and 16 years old. Economist Davi Ruet and Durban musician Majosi will host this entrepreneurship challenge through the COA Academy. Children from around the country are being encouraged to take part in the challenge, with registration closing on the 1st of May. COA Academy Principal Mark Anderson says it will help equip young learners with the skills needed to create and sustain successful businesses.
One of the things we're very aware of in traditional education is that a lot of students feel a real disconnect between what they see in the textbook and what they see in the real world around them. The Entrepreneurship Challenge is designed in a way that's not just teaching important information and knowledge, but actually giving the students an opportunity to practice that in the real world and to exercise those skills and then reflect on them. And that helps our students to move past a fear of failure and to actually learn to see this as a growing opportunity.
Truck maker Volvo reported a bigger than expected fall in the first quarter profit today and lowered its North American truck market outlook, pointing to increased uncertainty around tariffs and their impact on global trade. The Swedish group said it now sees the North American heavy truck market at 275,000 new vehicles this year. It previously forecasted from January was for 300,000 new heavy trucks. It repeated a market outlook for 290,000 new trucks in Europe, adding, however, that the current market conditions mean forecasts are subject to significant uncertainty. Operating profit was $1.39 billion against a year earlier at $18.2 billion. And lastly, the International Monetary Fund has reported that the U.S. economy will experience slower economic growth and higher prices, in part due to U.S. President Donald Trump's global tariffs. Growth is now expected to be at 1.8% this year, down from the influential financial agency's estimate of 2.7% for the U.S. in January. The BBC's Michelle Fleury has more.
In a sobering report, the International Monetary Fund warned that the decision to raise tariffs to levels exceeding the highs reached during the Great Recession marked the start of a new era, one that would slow global growth and hit the world's largest economy hardest. The IMF slashed its US growth forecast by nearly 1% in its quarterly report on the outlook for the global economy, adding that inflation would also be higher. The Chinese economy is likely to suffer from higher tariffs too, although to a lesser degree.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 603. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 60. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 88. And in Zambia, it's 28 kwacha 43. To the BRICS countries now, where $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 77, in Russia 81 rubles 30, India 85 rupees 16, China 7 yuan 31, and in South Africa it's 18 rand 62 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,341, platinum $959 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $68.03 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2 711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, good morning. I'm Eva Chipa.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Hashtag on the move and connect with us.
taking us to 11:49 Central Africa time. I think these are really important conversations to have, especially one like dementia. It's important to understand that, it's not just something that happens to people because they're old. It is, as the doctor said, that it is a group of diseases and a group of illnesses, and there's nothing more important than the diagnosis in order to really help and assist those who have dementia within your family, within your communities, and in your spaces.
Yeah. And for what stands for me in terms of the key issue was at the end of that conversation, because we think we who have retained our memory, we still have our memory, excuse me, and we're interacting with that person, we think, no, we must force this person to remember because we still have those memories with them. But I like the fact that she highlighted that we don't have to force that person. They'll have the episodes of remembrance that we can actually treasure and find space to actually remind them of who they are. So that's a level of care that I didn't know before.
And it takes a lot of patience to care for someone who has dementia. Any one of, the dementias that we know. I think the most common, as the doctor said, is Alzheimer's. And I actually didn't know that dementia was a group of diseases, and Alzheimer's wasn't something different from dementia. It was just one kind of dementia. And so that was great information to know. Social media is beautiful because it's actually presented some of these things that are, somewhat bizarre to many others as normal. And it's shown that people, can live normal lives, can live healthy lives, even when caring for someone with dementia. There's actually a TikTok account that I know that I follow. This is, a son, an elderly man and his wife who live in the house with his elderly father who has Alzheimer's. And it's great to see that every day they have the patience to give him the same information that they tell him almost every day. Like every day he wakes up and is like, what am I doing here? It's like, you're living in my house, Dad. It's me, your son, and you're living in my house with my wife and my kids, and we take care of you now. And he certainly was a man, from the conversations you hear, was a man who took care of his family, who stood by his family, and who was very independent. And you see some of those independent things sort of come out. He's like, where's my car? Where's my house? Where's this? Where's that? And it's like, no, we're here. We'll take care of you now, and you live with us. So that is a constant conversation that happens every day. In fact, in the videos that I see on their TikTok, that's pretty much more than half of the conversations that take place on a daily basis. The patience to really stay with that person, to take them through the journey and to help them sort of find their place in the world that they live in at that moment.
Yeah, it must be difficult to be misplaced with that memory loss. Have you experienced dementia? Let us know. Have you had a family member who has had dementia? I'm sure if you had dementia yourself, you wouldn't really know if it's dementia or not. But if you have experienced a family member, of course, you would know. Let us know on our WhatsApp number, +27 63 406 9126. +27 63 406 9126. We see you, Ovni Kabambi, there greeting us. Karibu, Channel Africa. Karibu to you too, Ovni.
Yeah, well, let's keep things moving. We're about to wrap up, but not without more music, and then we'll go to the Africa Update with Lulu Gabu.
The rhythm of Africa, the pulse.
one's called Good is Nice right here on Channel Africa. We are about to head on out of here, but of course not before Lulu Gabu lets us know what's coming up next on the Africa Update. Good morning, Lulu.
Good morning. Happy Wednesday.
Happy
Wet
Wednesday. It is here.
In the country. It's across the country.
True, true.
All right. Coming up today on Africa Update, condolences continue pouring in following the passing of Pope Francis on Monday. And we are going to be we're going to be covering that story, visually on all the news channels, the coffin carrying the Pope's body arriving at St. Peter's Basilica earlier today. And there was a service that was running and concurrently, and I think across the world, because even in South Africa, the Catholic Church had a service and a number of dignitaries were in attendance. So it's historic. We're going to be speaking about this for a long time to come. And, a lot of people paying their respects and people out at the Vatican